Back on CBS Sports HQ with a look at your AFC playoff picture after Saturday play. We know our top four. The Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens, and Texans all locked in place as your hat, t-shirt division winners. The wild card, we have two of our three teams, but nobody locked in place just yet seeding-wise. The Chargers and Steelers are in, but depending on the Chargers' Sunday outcome, they could flip 5-6. That would obviously affect matchup. The Broncos, it's win and you're in against the Chiefs in Week 18. The Bengals and Dolphins both hoping for a loss there. Here to explore with the fellas. Let's start there with the Bengals' chances. We're looking at FanDuel telling us it's 9-1 right now that they make the playoffs, an implied probability of 10%. It's not very high. Does it feel higher than that when you look at the two things that they need? They need Miami to suffer a loss in East Rutherford, and they need the twos for the Chiefs to take care of the Broncos. Chistian, as you look at those two things to happen, I'm not asking you to put a number on it, but better than 10%?
No, I would say pretty much 0%, because I don't think the Broncos are going to lose. But I've been on the end of both of these. I've been on the, hey, we win our last game, and we need some help, and it happened, right? And I've been in the other end where we win the game, we need something to happen, and it doesn't. There's this you're just sitting there hoping and praying, and it usually doesn't work out for you. And for the Cincinnati Bengals, it's just regretful losses, the games that they should have won. And I will literally go back to the very first game of the season where they just flat out didn't show up against the New England Patriots, who ended up winning the 3 games. They didn't show up for the game, and the Patriots won that game, and they easily should have had that game. I just don't think the Broncos are going to lose. I think the Dolphins have a better chance of losing. They may get 1 out of the 2.
I'm sorry, I'm very interested in that personal experience of yours. Can you tell us about not the watching of the game, but the helplessness for the Cincinnati Bengals between zeros on their clock and waiting for kick? What that feeling is like?
In 2002, it was, hey, we got to beat the Miami Dolphins, and we ended up beating them in overtime. And next thing you know, like Brett Favre and the New York Jets just had to beat the Green Bay Packers, and they weren't playing for anything, so they didn't even try. And the game, we knew we were done by the second quarter. I was like, well, they're not even trying. They're going to lose this game. Little bit different situation. You know, you just wonder if the Kansas City Chiefs have anything in them talent-wise to beat the Broncos. I just feel like it's a long shot. So many bad things that would have to happen for the Broncos to lose that game.
You probably spend more time thinking about what you could have done in those games prior.
You start like thinking back, and you have all this regret and like second-guessing every decision. You're like, why did we sleepwalk through the first 3.5 quarters in the first game of the season?
Emory, does this feel like a what-if for the Cincinnati Bengals looking at this season, or does this feel like we got a shot if you're sitting in that room?
No, it's a what-if, because the 10% is the Jets beating the Dolphins. The 90% that's not going to happen is the Broncos losing or losing to the Chiefs. And the reason why is, think about this Chiefs team that we saw. This is a Chiefs team, although 15-1, was not the best Chiefs team that we've seen under Andy Reid in terms of what we're used to seeing. And that means they had all their starters out there, and that still wasn't the best Chiefs team. So now you're going to throw the backups out there with this team that we hadn't seen play great all season long. The Broncos are going to win this ball game, and that's going to be tough for the Bengals because the Patriots game, the Chiefs game, both Ravens games. So it's like there's all of these close wins, these near hits that just didn't go their way, and that's why you end up at, where you are at the end.
I know we'll be down to 2s for the Kansas City Chiefs, but nothing at stake. A 15-win season, you can count them on one hand in the history of this league. So Andy Reid's selling that group something. Whoever it is taking the field, we'll see how much they buy. I don't know if anybody's buying the Pittsburgh Steelers right now, coming off of this loss, coming off of 4 consecutive to end the season. As you explore what they could be, Emory, moving forward, whether it be Houston or Baltimore, is it the same outcome in your eyes? Or if you put them on a field with Houston, do you think they could find something?
I think they could find something versus Houston because of their pressure. They can apply pressure on a young quarterback that takes a lot of sacks. And C.J. Stroud, he really this year starts to drift more back into the pocket as opposed to stepping up and finding someone deep down the field. They're banged up. So it's kind of like, hey, this game could look a lot like what we saw tonight versus the Cincinnati Bengals. And that if you get into those type of games, anything can happen. If they play the Ravens will run the football down their throat. They will throw the football all over that secondary because we saw them do that not too long ago on Christmas Day. So for me, the best matchup for Pittsburgh would be to go and take advantage of a Houston Texans team, because now you go indoors, ideal conditions, and against an offensive line that's kind of struggling protecting the quarterback, kind of what we saw tonight.
We can play Mr. Brightside real quick. If I'm like trying to convince my Steeler team, if I'm Mike Tomlin, I'm saying to McFadden's point when you had him on, listen, you play the Philadelphia Eagles, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Ravens, and then you just played the Bengals. Teams that can just score and they're really good teams, all playoff teams, all great quarterbacks, all could be the MVP, right? Now you get a chance, hopefully, possibly, to play the Houston Texans. But I don't even think that's like a possibility. That to me would have been the only chance they would have to kind of make things right.
Yeah.
But if they have to play the Ravens after watching them tonight, I just don't think they're going to be able to slow them down. And I don't think they're going to be able to score, because the best part about the Ravens defense, team, for me, is how good their defense has been playing over the last 5 weeks.
And that's a secondary that was dead last through 10 weeks in explosive plays allowed. They have completely turned a corner. They're top 10 in that realm as we come down the stretch. It's who you are this time of year, not who you were in September. Pittsburgh's wishing they could find some of that September and take it into the playoffs with them. Not the case. A loser in 4 straight heading into the playoffs. Their longest losing streak to end a season since 1998. On the receiving end of that outcome, guys, it's going to be the Ravens. And they're going to be outlined by familiarity no matter who they get. Either you get a divisional foe in the Pittsburgh Steelers, or you get your brother. A Harbaugh Bowl once again, Chargers versus Ravens. When you're looking at what that might mean both ways, not who do they want to see, but how do they match up against those two teams that do bring physicality with them wherever they go?
Well, listen, I know you may look at this Ravens team offensively and say, well, they're not a physical team. I don't know how anyone would even say that. They run the football downhill. They have big blocking tight ends, but they're also skilled, so they can run. And good luck stopping Lamar Jackson if you don't have fast, aggressive, disciplined players on defense. He's just going to outrun you. He'll outflank you, and then God forbid he actually throws it on the run. But I think, listen, I think this is defensively. I'm going to keep the playoffs for me. You got to have a defense to limit some of these high-powered offenses. I think the Ravens have kind of turned the corner and found their identity defensively, what makes them tick, what they're really good at. They found a real cool identity. They get after the quarterback, and they're doing better in the red zone.
Yeah, I agree with you with the identity part, because if you're playing Pittsburgh, we don't know what their offensive identity is. So if you're Baltimore, you're like, hey, we match up well against them. We can take away whatever they're trying to do out there offensively, and our defense can do a good job in winning and leading from the front. If you're facing the Chargers, we know they want to run the football. We know they want to push the ball vertically down the field, but they don't have that capability just yet. And what I love about both of these potential matchups, we have prior evidence. We saw them do a great job against both Pittsburgh and the Chargers this season, and we've seen them do a great job against the Chargers routinely, although this is a new regime. But at the end of the day, these two matchups potentially for Baltimore, there's no one on the other side like a Joe Burrow, like a Jamar Chase, like a T. Higgins that really threatens their defense, that could put them in the bind. This could be an old school Ravens type game where we can run the football, play action, and kind of control this game throughout on both sides. And special teams is always in Baltimore's favor.
We led with probability. We will end with probability. This is likely going to be a matchup between the Ravens and the Steelers, reliant on a Chargers-Vegas outcome. And the Raiders, not a whole lot to play for. Max Crosby not there. They have found a couple wins here down the stretch. We'll see how it plays out. The beauty of it, Sunday's coming. Here's a look at what's coming on CBS. You got the Panthers and the Falcons. That's a game that's happening. Bills and Pats. Bills are locked in. Pats playing for the top overall pick. There's things to be had here. Giants and Eagles. Eagles are locked in. Saquon not going. Giants, they've squandered the first overall pick. Mathematically, they cannot find their way back there, but can still better themselves by losing again. Texans and Titans locked in. Chiefs and Broncos. Big one right there with massive implications. We know that the Cincinnati Bengals will be watching. Miami, they'll be in action as well in that window. You got Chargers and Raiders to figure out the 5-6 in the AFC.